And I mean, I knew right then and there that something horrible had happened. And then when he told me that he was dead, it was like waking up from a nightmare and hoping to wake up from a nightmare and saying, this is a joke.
Decades after the king passed away, a surprising interview brought Elvis back into the spotlight. At 88, his former chauffeur broke down and revealed what really happened between shows. Hidden sickness, secret struggles, and moments fans never saw. What was Elvis truly fighting in his final years? The man who drove the king, James Henderson, was only 23 when he was hired in 1962 as Elvis Presley's personal chauffeur. Working for a Memphis car service, he was approached by one of Elvis's managers with an offer that promised excellent pay and proximity to the biggest star in the world. James accepted without hesitation, unaware that the job would reshape his entire life. At first, his duties were simple, driving Elvis to studios, meetings, restaurants, and around Memphis. Elvis treated James kindly and with respect, never as a servant. Close in age, the two formed an easy bond. Elvis appreciated James's normalcy and youth, and their relaxed rapport made long hours together feel natural. Soon, James's role expanded. He traveled with Elvis on demanding national tours, responsible for transporting him between airports, hotels, and concert venues on tight schedules. The pressure was immense, but James proved reliable, earning Elvis's complete trust. During countless hours alone in the car, Elvis confided in James about his fears, frustrations, and private struggles. James became more than an employee. He was a confidant. Discretion was essential. Elvis valued loyalty above all else, and James honored that code. He refused lucrative tabloid offers, believing that betraying Elvis's trust would be unforgivable. For 15 years, James witnessed both extremes of Elvis's life: the electrifying performer adored by fans, and the troubled man battling demons behind closed doors. Though grateful for Elvis's generosity and friendship, James grew uneasy. He saw behavior that conflicted with his conscience and felt torn between loyalty and morality. By the early 1970s, Elvis's declining health and substance use were impossible to ignore. Weight gain, exhaustion, and erratic behavior alarmed James, yet he felt powerless to intervene without losing his job or his relationship with Elvis. When Elvis passed away in August 1977, James was heartbroken but not shocked. He attended the funeral burdened by guilt, wondering if he should have done more. Afterward, he left the entertainment world, returning to ordinary driving work and rejecting all interviews. He carried his memories in silence for decades. Now, at 88, James feels the weight of those secrets more heavily than ever. Nearing the end of his life, he questions his long silence. He no longer wants the full truth about Elvis, the man behind the legend, to end with him. The dark hours between performances. James Henderson sat in his small apartment and struggled to find the words to describe what happened during those hours between Elvis's performances. His hands trembled as he spoke, and tears formed in his eyes as the memories came flooding back after so many years of trying to forget. He explained that the public only saw Elvis during his concerts when the singer was at his best, performing with energy and charisma that electrified audiences. But what happened in the hours between those shows was a different story entirely. One that was dark and disturbing, and that revealed how much Elvis was suffering behind his public persona. After completing a concert where he had sung and moved around the stage for an hour or more, Elvis would return to his dressing room completely exhausted. The adrenaline and excitement from performing in front of thousands of screaming fans would leave him wound up and unable to relax or calm down naturally. James described how Elvis's hands would be shaking and how the singer would be covered in sweat from the physical exertion of the performance. This was when the real problems would begin. Elvis would immediately take large amounts of medications to bring himself down from the high of performing. James watched as Elvis would take handfuls of pills that were supposed to calm him down and help him relax after the intensity of being on stage. These medications included powerful tranquilizers and sedatives that would hit Elvis's system hard and fast. Within 30 minutes of taking the pills, Elvis would become noticeably different, his speech slowing down and his movements becoming uncoordinated and clumsy. James's job was to drive Elvis from the concert venue back to whatever hotel they were staying at that night. This drive, which usually took no more than 20 or 30 minutes, became one of the most stressful parts of James's work. He would help Elvis into the back seat of the car, while the singer was already becoming heavily intoxicated from the medications he had taken. Elvis would often lie down across the back seat and close his eyes, sometimes falling into a deep sleep before they even reached the hotel. The transformation that James witnessed was shocking and frightening. Elvis would go from being the confident, commanding performer that audiences adored to being someone who could barely function or speak coherently. James described instances where Elvis would try to talk, but his words would be so slurred that they were impossible to understand. Other times, Elvis would seem confused about where he was or what was happening, asking questions that made no sense, or expressing paranoid thoughts about people following them or trying to hurt him. When they arrived at the hotel, James would often have to physically help Elvis get out of the car and into the building. Elvis, who had just performed energetically in front of thousands of people, would now be so intoxicated that he needed support to walk. James would put Elvis's arm around his shoulders and half carry the singer through back entrances and service elevators to avoid being seen by hotel guests or staff. These moments were humiliating for Elvis and difficult for James, who hated seeing someone he respected reduced to such a helpless state. Getting Elvis to his hotel room was only the beginning of the long night ahead. Once inside the room, Elvis would often continue taking more medications, saying he needed them to sleep or to deal with pain or to calm his racing thoughts. James would stay with Elvis for hours, worried that if he left, the singer might take too many pills and overdose. James was not a medical professional and did not really know what to look for or what to do if Elvis was in real danger, but he felt responsible for making sure nothing terrible happened on his watch. During these dark hours between shows, James witnessed behavior from Elvis that ranged from sad to frightening. Sometimes Elvis would cry and talk about how lonely he felt, despite being surrounded by people all the time. He would express feelings of emptiness and purposelessness that seemed strange coming from someone so famous and successful. Other times, Elvis would become angry and would rant about people he felt had betrayed him or taken advantage of him. The medication seemed to strip away Elvis's normal filters and controls, revealing raw emotions and thoughts that he usually kept hidden. James described one particularly disturbing pattern, where Elvis would sometimes forget that he had already taken medications and would take more, not realizing he was doubling or tripling the doses that had been prescribed. When James would try to stop him or remind him that he had already taken pills, Elvis would become defensive and insist that he knew what he was doing. The singer would claim that he had been taking these medications for years and knew his own body well enough to know what he needed. James felt helpless watching Elvis poison himself night after night. The hours between midnight and dawn were the worst. Elvis would often be unable to sleep despite taking medications specifically meant to make him unconscious. He would pace around the hotel room or sit staring at the television without really watching it. James would try to make conversation or to help Elvis relax, but nothing seemed to work. Elvis seemed trapped in his own mind, unable to escape the thoughts and feelings that tormented him when he was not performing or being distracted by other activities. By the time morning came, Elvis would often look terrible, with dark circles under his eyes and his face pale and drawn. James would help him get cleaned up and ready for whatever was scheduled for that day, whether it was traveling to the next city or preparing for another performance that evening. The cycle would then repeat itself, with Elvis performing brilliantly on stage and then collapsing into substance-induced confusion and misery as soon as the show ended. James broke down crying as he described watching this pattern repeat itself hundreds of times over the years. He explained that he had felt powerless to help Elvis break the cycle or to convince him to seek treatment for what was clearly a serious addiction. Every time James tried to bring up his concerns, Elvis would shut down the conversation or would become angry. The singer did not want to hear that he had a problem and would not accept help from someone he considered just a driver rather than a doctor or family member who might have more authority to intervene. However, there were deeper secrets that Elvis even hid from his family: the secret women and hidden affairs. James Henderson's voice became quieter and more hesitant as he began discussing another aspect of Elvis's life between shows that he had never revealed before. This topic made him particularly uncomfortable because it involved betraying confidences and exposing behavior that reflected badly on someone he had cared about. But James felt that providing a complete picture of Elvis's life required acknowledging all aspects of it, including the parts that were unflattering or that contradicted the public image of Elvis as a devoted husband. James revealed that Elvis had numerous affairs and secret encounters with women throughout the years when he was married to Priscilla. These relationships were not just one-time mistakes or brief indiscretions, but rather a consistent pattern of infidelity that continued throughout Elvis's marriage. Between shows during concert tours, Elvis would arrange to meet with various women in different cities, and James was often the person responsible for making these meetings happen without anyone else knowing about them. The pattern would typically involve Elvis meeting a woman at a concert or through mutual friends, and then asking James to arrange a private meeting. James would drive Elvis to hotels or private locations where these encounters would take place. Sometimes the meetings would last just an hour or two. Other times, Elvis would spend entire nights with women while Priscilla was back home in Memphis, believing her husband was simply resting between performances. James became skilled at arranging these secret meetings and ensuring that no one else in Elvis's entourage knew what was happening. James described feeling deeply uncomfortable with his role in facilitating Elvis's affairs. He had met Priscilla many times and thought she was a wonderful person who genuinely loved Elvis and who deserved better treatment than she was receiving. James could see that Priscilla was lonely and unhappy with how little time Elvis spent at home and how distant he had become in their relationship. But Priscilla apparently did not know about the extent of Elvis's infidelity, and James was helping to keep these secrets from her. The women that Elvis became involved with during tours came from various backgrounds and circumstances. Some were aspiring actresses or singers who hoped that a relationship with Elvis might help their careers. Others were fans who had been selected from concert audiences to meet Elvis backstage and who caught his attention. A few were women who moved in the same social circles as Elvis and who were introduced to him by mutual friends. James observed that Elvis did not seem to have a particular type, but rather seemed drawn to different women for different reasons at different times. What troubled James most was that these relationships seemed to bring Elvis no real happiness or satisfaction, despite the effort and risk involved in maintaining them. Elvis would seem excited about a new woman initially, but the interest would fade quickly, and he would move on to someone else. The pattern suggested that Elvis was searching for something through these relationships, but was never finding what he was looking for. James believed that Elvis was fundamentally lonely and was trying to fill an emotional void through physical intimacy with various women. But the strategy was not working. James also revealed that some of these relationships overlapped with each other in complicated and messy ways. Elvis might be involved with women in multiple cities simultaneously, maintaining relationships with different people during different stops on his tour schedule. James would have to keep track of who Elvis was seeing in which city, and make sure that these women never found out about each other. The deception and coordination required became exhausting and morally troubling for James. There were moments when James wanted to refuse to participate in arranging these meetings or to tell Elvis that he should stop cheating on his wife. But James knew that expressing such opinions would likely cost him his job. Elvis did not appreciate being judged or criticized by his employees, and James understood that his role was to do what Elvis asked rather than to question his choices. This understanding did not make James feel better about his complicity in the affairs, but it explained why he continued to facilitate them despite his discomfort. James expressed particular regret about a relationship that Elvis had with a woman in Las Vegas during the early 1970s. This relationship was more serious than most of Elvis's casual encounters and lasted for several months. The woman was genuinely in love with Elvis and believed that he would eventually leave Priscilla to be with her. James had to listen to this woman talk about her hopes for a future with Elvis, knowing that Elvis had no intention of leaving his wife and that he was simply using this woman for companionship during his Las Vegas residency. When Elvis eventually ended the relationship and stopped seeing the woman, she was devastated. James heard that she had suffered something like a nervous breakdown from the heartbreak of losing Elvis. This incident made James realize that Elvis's affairs were not victimless indiscretions, but rather were causing real pain and harm to the women who became emotionally involved with him. James felt guilty about his role in facilitating a relationship that had caused so much suffering. The affairs continued even as Elvis's marriage to Priscilla was clearly falling apart. James could see that Elvis and Priscilla were growing further apart with each passing year, communicating less and spending less time together. Eventually, Priscilla left Elvis and their divorce was finalized in 1973. James was not surprised by the divorce, given what he knew about how Elvis had treated the marriage, but he felt sad that it had ended this way, rather than with Elvis making an effort to save the relationship. After the divorce, Elvis's involvement with women became even more complicated and sometimes disturbing. Without the constraint of being married, Elvis felt free to pursue relationships more openly. But his substance use was also getting worse during this period, which affected his behavior and judgment. James witnessed encounters between Elvis and women where Elvis was so intoxicated that he could barely function, creating situations that were sad and uncomfortable for everyone involved. James broke down emotionally as he discussed this aspect of Elvis's life, because it revealed a side of the singer that contradicted the wholesome image that many fans still maintained. James struggled with whether revealing these details was the right thing to do, or whether he was betraying Elvis's memory by exposing his infidelity and his treatment of women. But ultimately, James felt that the truth was important even when it was unflattering, and that pretending Elvis had been perfect did a disservice to understanding him as a complex and flawed human being. But what triggered this confession after decades? The breaking point that changed everything. James Henderson's voice shook as he began to describe the incident that haunted him more than any other moment of his years with Elvis Presley. He paused repeatedly, struggling to steady himself, because the memory marked the point where everything between him and Elvis changed forever. The incident occurred in 1973 during a grueling concert tour, a period when Elvis's substance use had escalated to frightening levels. For weeks beforehand, James had been deeply worried, noticing how many pills Elvis was taking and how unpredictable his moods and behavior had become. That night started like countless others. Elvis performed a concert that was mostly successful, though James could tell something was wrong. Elvis looked exhausted, and at times he forgot lyrics he normally knew by heart. After the show, Elvis went straight to his dressing room and began taking pills. James estimated it was 15 or 20 different medications. He had seen Elvis take large quantities before, but this amount alarmed him. James gently warned him to slow down, but Elvis waved him off, insisting he knew his limits. James then drove Elvis toward the hotel. Elvis lay stretched across the back seat, eyes closed. At first, James thought he was simply resting. Minutes later, he glanced in the rearview mirror and felt a surge of panic. Elvis's breathing was shallow and uneven. James called out to him, then louder, but Elvis did not respond. James pulled over and turned around. What he saw terrified him. Elvis's lips were slightly blue, his skin pale and damp. His chest barely moved. James shook him and shouted his name, but there was no reaction. At that moment, James was certain Elvis was dying in the back of his car. With no time to think, James made a desperate decision. Taking Elvis to a hospital would trigger chaos and expose his substance dependence publicly. Instead, James sped toward the hotel, watching the mirror constantly, praying Elvis would keep breathing. The short drive felt endless, every second filled with fear that Elvis would slip away. At the hotel, James ran inside and grabbed help. Together, they carried Elvis to his room and laid him on the bed. James immediately called Dr. Nick. The wait for the doctor felt unbearable. James stayed by Elvis's side, counting breaths, feeling helpless and terrified that he would witness Elvis die before help arrived. When Dr. Nick finally came, he acted fast, administering emergency treatment and monitoring Elvis closely. Several times, James was convinced it was too late. Elvis lay unnaturally still, unresponsive. Slowly, color returned to his face, and his breathing stabilized. Elvis had survived, narrowly. Hours later, Elvis woke up confused, with no memory of what had happened. When James and the doctor explained how close he had come to death, Elvis became defensive. Elvis dismissed their concern, insisting he had only been deeply asleep. He refused to accept that the pills had nearly taken his life. That denial hit James harder than anything else that night. Just hours earlier, he had been convinced Elvis was dying in the back of his car. He had already imagined the unbearable task of calling Priscilla and explaining that Elvis Presley was gone. The fear, the panic, and the responsibility still weighed heavily on him. Hearing Elvis brush it all aside shattered something deep inside James. For the first time since he had started working for Elvis, James spoke up without holding back. He confronted him directly, his voice filled with fear and desperation. He begged Elvis to get help, to slow down, to enter treatment before it was too late. James told him he could not keep watching him destroy himself. The words poured out, fueled by guilt and the terror of how close he had come to losing him. James spoke about Lisa Marie, about family, and about the people who truly loved Elvis. He pleaded with him to choose life, to think beyond the moment and see the damage being done. But Elvis responded with cold distance. He reminded James that his job was to drive, not to lecture. He said James could never understand the pressure, pain, and exhaustion that came with being Elvis Presley. The medication, he insisted, was necessary. He warned James to stay in his place or find another job. That conversation devastated James. The easy friendship and trust they once shared vanished in that moment. Although James remained Elvis's driver, everything had changed. He stopped speaking openly and stopped believing he could save him. Emotionally, he pulled away, counting the days until he could leave, forever carrying the memory of the night Elvis nearly died in the back of his car. The guilt and the final confession. Now, at age 88, James Henderson sat in his modest apartment, surrounded by a few photographs and mementos from his years working for Elvis. He looked frail and tired, and his hands shook slightly as he spoke about why he had decided to finally reveal what he had witnessed all those years ago. James explained that he had been diagnosed with a serious illness, and that his doctors had told him he probably had only a few months left to live. This news had forced James to confront questions about his legacy and about whether he had a responsibility to tell the truth before he died. For decades after Elvis' death, James had kept silent about what he knew. He had turned down countless requests for interviews from journalists, documentaries makers, and authors who wanted to write about Elvis's life. James had convinced himself that maintaining Elvis's secrets was a form of loyalty and respect for someone who had been his employer and friend. He had believed that exposing Elvis's problems with illegal substances and infidelity would be a betrayal that would dishonor the singer's memory. But as James grew older and thought more about his own life and choices, he began to question whether his silence had been the right decision. He started to feel that keeping Elvis's secrets had actually done a disservice to the truth and to the public's understanding of an important cultural figure. James realized that the sanitized, idealized version of Elvis that many people believed in was fundamentally dishonest and incomplete. By refusing to speak about what he had witnessed, James had helped maintain a false narrative that ignored the real struggles and flaws of a complicated human being. James also struggled with tremendous guilt about his own role in enabling Elvis's substances use and infidelity. He questioned whether he should have done more to help Elvis, or whether he should have quit his job rather than continuing to facilitate behavior he knew was destructive. James wondered if speaking up earlier or taking more drastic action might have saved Elvis's life, or at least reduced his suffering. These questions haunted James and contributed to his decision to finally speak publicly about what he had witnessed. The guilt was particularly intense when James thought about Priscilla and Lisa Marie. He had helped Elvis hide his affairs from Priscilla, driving Elvis to secret meetings with other women while Priscilla was at home alone. James felt that he had betrayed Priscilla's trust and had contributed to the breakdown of Elvis's marriage. He also thought about Lisa Marie growing up without her father because Elvis had died from his substance abuse, and James wondered if he could have done something that might have prevented that tragedy. James decided that before he passed away, he needed to tell the truth about what he had witnessed. He felt that people deserved to know the complete story of Elvis's life, rather than just the parts that were glamorous or admirable. James believed that understanding Elvis's struggles with addiction and his personal flaws was important for truly appreciating him as a human being, rather than as some kind of untouchable icon. The truth was messy and uncomfortable, but James felt it was more valuable than comfortable lies. He also hoped that by revealing what happened between shows during Elvis's tours, he might help other people who were struggling with similar issues. James wanted people to understand that addiction and self-destructive behavior could affect anyone regardless of fame or success. He hoped that Elvis's story might serve as a warning about the dangers of prescription substance misuse and about the importance of getting help before it was too late. If James's confession could help even one person avoid Elvis's fate, then revealing these painful secrets would be worthwhile. James acknowledged that many Elvis fans would be angry with him for revealing unflattering information about their idol. He expected to receive criticism and accusations that he was betraying Elvis's memory, or that he was lying to get attention in his final days. James accepted that these reactions were inevitable and said he was willing to face that backlash because he believed telling the truth was more important than protecting Elvis's image. As James finished his confession, tears streamed down his weathered face and his voice broke with emotion. He said that he had loved Elvis despite all his flaws and problems. He remembered the good times when Elvis had been kind and generous and genuinely funny and enjoyable to be around. James wanted people to understand that revealing Elvis's struggles did not mean he did not respect and care about the singer. Rather, it meant he thought Elvis deserved to be remembered as a real person with both strengths and weaknesses, rather than as a perfect legend who never existed. James expressed hope that his confession would contribute to a more honest and complete understanding of Elvis Presley. He wanted future generations to know the truth about the man behind the music, to understand the toll that fame took on him, and to recognize the human cost of the pressures and expectations placed on someone who became a cultural icon. James believed that this complete picture, including the dark and difficult parts, was ultimately more interesting and valuable than the sanitized version that ignored Elvis's real struggles. In his final words, James said that he hoped Elvis could forgive him from wherever he might be for revealing these secrets that had been kept for so long. James explained that his decision to speak was not motivated by malice or a desire to hurt Elvis's reputation, but rather by a belief that the truth mattered and that Elvis's full story deserved to be told. He hoped that by unburdening himself of these secrets before his death, he could find some peace with his own role in Elvis's life and with the choices he had made during those complicated years. James Henderson passed away 3 months after giving his final interview, taking with him any remaining secrets about his years as Elvis Presley's chauffeur. His confession had provided a window into aspects of Elvis's life that had been hidden from the public for decades. The revelations confirmed what many people had suspected about Elvis's substance use and personal life, but hearing the details from someone who had been there and witnessed it firsthand gave the story new weight and credibility. James's decision to speak the truth in his final days added an important chapter to the ongoing effort to understand the real Elvis Presley beyond the legend and the myth.